What is up, 80s Revolution followers, flock members of the crew? I am back within 48 hours of my previous video. What's up with that? Well, I wanted to talk a little bit more about what to expect from the channel. In the last video, Hasbro Series 6, we talked about this idea that I had going forward, reviewing classic 80s WWF years, basically a year in review. And I wanted to come on here and explain what that was going to be a little bit further, but I thought since I'm on here, I might as well continue on with the Hasbro series review. So that would bring us up to Hasbro Series 6, which would be, is it Hasbro Series 6? I don't know. I believe it is. But anyway, it's the Yellow Card series from 1994. The first time the Hasbro figures came on anything but a blue card, and continued the trend with colored cards. So we are indeed talking about Series 7. 1993, Series 7, first non-blue backed card, Yellow Card, Series 7, 1993. I'll go through those, and then I will talk about, actually I'll talk about that first. I will talk about what is coming up first so that I retain all of you and I catch you in the beginning of the video. So, like I said in the Hasbro Series 6 review, I have a large collection of footage from both WCW / NWA and WWF. My WWF footage begins in about 1973, I think, just house shows. So from about 1973 to 1983, I have a pretty large collection of house shows. Madison Square Garden, Philadelphia Spectrum, mostly those two from those early years. There might be a Boston Garden show thrown in there here and there. I'm not sure. Then starting in 1983, I have pretty much half the year of WWF Championship Wrestling from 1983 and all the house shows that came in 1983. Beginning in 1984, however, I have accumulated footage to put in chronological order from January 1st, 1984 to December 31st, 1984. And that includes syndicated TV shows and house shows. And what I did was I put them in order. And what I want to do with you guys is basically watch a show and then review it with you. I came on tonight because I don't want to, confuse anybody. I'm not actually going to put the footage on YouTube of the actual show. Even though you can find a lot of that, I mean, it's everywhere on YouTube. Complete house shows, complete, TV shows. They shut it down often, and I don't want my account messed with or anything like that. So, you guys are not actually going to see the footage that I'm watching, but what I want to do is watch it and then give you about as in-depth review as I can, talking about the matches, talking about some of the history of the guys in the matches, some of the jobbers, and if they have any interesting history, any interesting angles that were shot on the show or were leading up to, people who were coming into the WWF, where they came from, people who left, things like that. And really spend some time dissecting each show and, making it as realistic for you guys as I can without you actually seeing the show. And if there's any, any interesting clips or any interesting commercials, I'm sure I can show you, brief clips of that without actually getting into any copyright trouble. So that's the idea. That's what I want to do. And I want to show you what I'm talking about. So I went into the archives and I pulled out pretty much 1984 WWF. And here it is. I'm going to try not to drop it. So here it is. Here is 1984 WWF. So it's in order. And so we will be starting with, and I don't know when this is going to happen. I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks. But we will be starting with Championship Wrestling, which was the syndicated show in 1984 for the WWF. And it really began the boom era of the World Wrestling Federation. This is the year that Vince McMahon went out and basically brought talent from all over the country and brought them into his World Wrestling Federation and really started beginning the giant, entity that the WWE is today. 1984 was the beginning of the end of territories because McMahon basically went out and, took the talent from these organizations and these local regionalized organizations and promised, and offered them a big worldwide stage, national wide at the time, but eventually a worldwide stage. So we will be beginning with Championship Wrestling, which aired on Saturdays. I think it aired on multiple times. I think Saturdays at like 11, Saturdays at midnight in some places, Saturday morning. But anyway, this is Championship Wrestling, episode 1 from January 7th, 1984. That's the first piece of footage that I have from 1984. So then that will be followed by Championship Wrestling episodes January 14th, 84, January 21st, 84, and January 28th, 84. Okay? Now, where it gets interesting is that January 21st, so we have a Championship Wrestling episode that aired on January 21st. Then that night, according to the archives, there was a Philadelphia Spectrum show on January 21st, 1984. So what I'll be doing is watching the Championship Wrestling episode from 1/21/84 that would have aired Saturday morning, and then I'll be watching a Philadelphia Spectrum house show from later that night and reviewing that as well. Then we have a Madison Square Garden show from January 23rd, 1984, followed by a Championship Wrestling show from February 4th. So you get the idea. This is basically, again, if I can not drop them, this is basically 1984 WWF Championship Wrestling episodes and house shows, all in chronological order. The stack is all in order. So I will watch them as they aired and review them with you. And we will do the same thing for 1985. We will see together the build-up to the first WrestleMania. We will see the takeoff of the rock and wrestling era. We will see the boom, the worldwide boom, the commercial takeover of the WWF in 1984. We will see how the WWF became a marketing, massive conglomerate. We'll see the commercials for the LJN wrestling figures. We will see the first ever Saturday night's main event. We will see the start of shows like Primetime Wrestling, of USA All-American Wrestling, of WrestleMania 1, like I said, Tuesday Night Titans, which was a very unique show that I actually really love, and I have a run of that. And again, they're all in order. So we'll watch a Championship Wrestling show together. Maybe 2 nights later, there'll be a TNT that airs. you know, and again, on and on for the entire year. So we're going to go through 85. We're going to go through 86 when we get into WrestleMania 2. We're going to do 87 when we talk about Hogan and Andre and WrestleMania 3. So basically, you're going to hang out with me while I watch and review these shows. And I will give you my best effort at reviewing them, capturing them for you, and presenting them to you so that you feel like you are sharing it with me. That is the idea. And again, I know some people are excited about it. I wanted to come on and tell you exactly what I was going to do. Yeah. With that being said, so we're going to be reviewing WWF from, I might start in 83 because I have TV shows in 83. So I might start in 83, but we're going to go to 94. That's where my footage stops. That's where I stopped really being interested in the WWF, and that's where I stopped my footage. WCW, however, I have a massive collection of WCW. I have it beginning in 1984 and going until the end of the company. So I have 1984, the first Starrcade in 83. I have all of the Saturday night shows, the WTBS shows. I have the main events, the NWA main events. Then we start, you know, all of the NWA Saturday nights. Then we start to transition into WCW Saturday night, WCW Monday Nitro, Thursday Night Thunder, and all of the pay-per-views in between. Every single one. I have every single pay-per-view from WCW history and NWA history of all time. I just finished watching that. You know how long it took me to watch that? From 1984 to 2000. When Nitro ended, it took me 8 years to watch that. So I would basically put on a show here and there when I was going to bed or whatever like that, and I would probably watch maybe an hour a night of wrestling, and it took me 8 years to go through all of my collection of WCW and NWA. Now, after watching all of that, I have decided that I don't have a ton of interest in WCW from the Monday Nitro. So from 1995 to 2001, I don't have a ton of interest. I watched it all, but I don't need it. I could do without it. So I am considering, not sure yet, but I am considering ring skirts. You might be interested in this. I'm considering getting rid of WCW 1995 to 2000. We're talking every single WCW Saturday Night episode, every single Monday Nitro, every single Thunder, every single pay-per-view from 95 to 2000. I can't guesstimate the discs amount. So there's 52 or so per year, plus pay-per-views, but we could 4,000 discs. I don't know. I'm considering departing with those. Not for cash. I'm not interested in money, but for trade. I would be willing to trade those away to one person for some decent trade bait. Anyway, so that's what's coming up. I hope you're excited about that. I am. Whatever it does for the channel is great. I just hope it brings more, just people that love it and are watching it or watching me talk about it, and that I get to meet more people. So that's what's coming up. Okay. Hasbro 1993, Series 7, Series 6, maybe, Series 7. Yellow card. Okay, first up. In 1982, this wrestler made his debut in the American Wrestling Association, the AWA, Vern Gagne's company out of Minnesota. And he was known then as Kevin Kelly. And around 84, he started becoming a babyface in the company as Mr. Magnificent Kevin Kelly. He kind of had like that thin, long blonde hair look, kind of like Hulk Hogan, like Danny Spivey, like Barry Windham. And he was huge. He was like 6'7", 6'8". And at the time, he was a little thinner, so he could move around the ring a little bit. Became a heel in the AWA and basically was around until they closed up in 1991, messed around on the indies for a while, and then made his debut in the WWF as Nails. Nails was brought in to feud with the Big Boss Man, and if you recall, the idea with Nails is that he was a prisoner that the Big Boss Man guarded in prison during Big Boss Man's prison guard stint. Anyway, this is Nails, the escaped prisoner or former prisoner of the Big Boss Man. And here he is. It's a decent figure. It's an actually pretty great figure. One of my favorite play poses, very basic, very simple. Of course, he had his orange jumpsuit. You'd think if you got out of prison, you'd change your clothes, but not Nails. He kept his prison gear and had a relatively forgettable run in the WWF. And apparently the urban legend is that Nails physically attacked Vince McMahon for whatever reason. I don't know. But that was the end of Nails, basically end of Nails' career. I think he wrestled in the very short-lived AWF, which was, I think, run by Tito Santana and Sergeant Slaughter. And I think he was called The Prisoner. Okay, moving on. Kamala. So the WWF took a legitimately terrifying wrestler. As an 8-year-old kid, when I first saw Kamala in the Mid-South territory, I was terrified of him. Kamala was the first wrestler that I was legitimately scared of. And I talked about this when I did the LJN review, but Kamala has wrestled everywhere. And when he first came to the WWF in 84, late 84, early 85, he was allowed to be a scary bad guy. That was short-lived. He went away for a while, did his thing in other parts of the, the country. And when he came back to the WWF in the 90s, he was initially a bad guy, and then they turned him good. And not only good, but good and, like, goofy. And, but anyway, he got a Hasbro figure. Here it is, the Ugandan giant Kamala. And, of course, for an absolutely unknown reason, his legs are fused together. So we're talking about a large wrestler, a big fat wrestler, that any other body type would have worked for except the fused legs. I can't wrap my head around this choice of legs for Kamala. From here on up, pretty good. And then we come down to the legs, and it's absolute garbage. I can understand, I guess I get, using Hasbro's mentality, I guess I understand why they chose it. I mean, he did do that sort of big splash finishing move, and of course, this pull the neck down thing would lead to a big splash, but, great figure from the waist up. The Ugandan giant, Kamala. First wrestler I was ever afraid of. We talked about Crush from Demolition. Brian Adams. There was Brian Clark and Brian Adams. But Brian Adams was Crush in Demolition, the third member of Demolition, when Demolition Axe was slowly fading out. He was repackaged in the WWF in 1993 as Kona Crush. And this Crush was from Hawaii. And for some reason they called him Kona Crush. I guess he was sort of a surfer type Hawaiian. I don't know. But here is his second WWF Hasbro figure, the good guy Kona Crush. Good figure, good pose, no problem with this figure at all. His finishing move was one of the worst of all time. It was basically the Atomic Noogie. Actually, no. Sergeant Slaughter did the Atomic Noogie. Kona Crush would crush your head. He would basically just grab your head on either side with his hands and squeeze. And that was his big finishing move. Very creative. Maybe they called it the Crusher. I don't know. But this is the Hasbro Crush figure. One of the most, one of the most iconic characters of the 90s started making his debut in the WWF in about 1992. And Scott Hall, as we have all grown to know and love, I'm sure made his debut in Florida or wherever he, originally lived, but got his first shot at stardom in the AWA as Scott Hall. And as Scott Hall, he was a very tall, muscular, good-looking, kind of like a Magnum PI type look. And was green and rusty and needed a lot of work. And they teamed him with Curt Hennig, and those two captured AWA Tag Team title. Scott Hall left the AWA. I think he did some work in Florida. And then he got his shot as a totally repackaged character. And if you remember the vignettes in the WWF in the early 90s, Scott Hall was kind of this Scarface, sort of Mexican greaser sort of character. The gimmicks, the hey-yos, and the take a look at the bad guy and all that overhyped accent. And boy, did he nail it, because it really made him, brought him the fame that he has now. And so this is the Scott Hall Razor Ramon Hasbro figure. Number one. There have been 2 Razor Ramones made. This is the first. So, decent look. Debut look, I believe. Of course, the gold chains and that weird sort of hair curl thing that he has hanging down. Great figure. Very greatly detailed and a good play pose. Great figure overall. Great character. Welcome to the big stage, Scott Hall. We've talked about Shawn Michaels. He got one of the all-time, if not the all-time worst Hasbro figures as part of the Rockers. And then around 92, 93, Shawn Michaels began that subtle heel turn that we are all used to seeing as wrestling fans. And in a pretty iconic, memorable moment, turned on Marty Jannetty by kicking him or throwing him through a plate glass window on an episode of wrestling, WWF Superstars of Wrestling, on the Barber Shop, which was kind of like a Piper's Pit type thing, hosted by Brutus Beefcake. And that began the heel turn and the rise to superstardom of Shawn Michaels. And this is the second Hasbro figure. This is the Heartbreak Kid era, the early Heartbreak Kid with Sherry Martel and, the sexy boy theme song. But anyway, this is the Shawn Michaels that we all know and love. The Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Great figure. Great play pose. Absolutely great figure. And really, like I said, the beginning of superstardom. When we're talking about Shawn Michaels, love him or hate him, he's got to be in the top 10, of the 90s and 2000s of greatest, most influential or just big name characters. Here he is. And he started as a, babyface Rockers tag team and became the Heartbreak Kid. Sorry about that. Voice gets away from me sometimes. Finally, I don't know, Owen Hart. Hart family, obviously, little brother of Bret Hart, had all that fame, or not fame, but all that early exposure to the business by being in one of the biggest wrestling families of all time, the Hart family, getting lots of exposure in Canada, and doing some very early stuff in WCW or NWA before, you know, being brought into the WWF as the Blue Blazer. After the Blue Blazer gimmick, he wrestled as Owen Hart, and obviously, you know, one of the most horrible things that have ever happened in the wrestling world, died in front of thousands of people and millions, or you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands watching on pay-per-view. Again, in one of wrestling's biggest tragedies. But this is the Owen Hart figure from his days as a member of the New Foundation when he was teaming with Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Here is the Rocket, Owen Hart. His one and only Hasbro figure. And aside from classic superstars, yeah, I think he got a Blue Blazer figure as a Jax. I don't know. I can't remember. But this is one of the only Owen Hart figures you're going to ever see. And again, this is part of his run as a member of the New Foundation with Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Great play pose, great figure, tragic, tragic story. Okay, guys, so that is that. That's Hasbro Series 7. Here we go. We're going to wrap up the Hasbros, and we are going to dive into this WWF 1984 year in review thing. I'm excited about it. I know from the comments you guys are excited about it. It's coming real soon. So let's keep going. Let's keep having some fun. See you soon.